So in my last video, which I shot 10 days ago, I was attempting to run 5 kilometers in under 23 minutes. Of course, I failed. Now, I've been active most of my life, so running 5 kilometers shouldn't really be a big deal, but I've lost a lot of fitness. I now weigh 90 kilograms at 6'2", which is heavier than I've ever been in my whole life. And so 10 days ago was really the start of my trying to regain former levels of fitness that I've enjoyed. Evidently, it was a big mistake because I woke up the next morning with Achilles tendonitis. And after 10 days, it's still there. Now, it was a big puzzlement to me why, when I've been active in the past, whatever, about 10 years ago, I was able to run about 100 kilometers in a day. In my youth, I'd run 5 kilometers in about 15. No, that's nonsense. I ran 1.5 miles, which was 2.4 kilometers, in 7 minutes 40. That was with a little bit of hills, and that was competitive against a lot of other people. So I was only 21 years old. At my very, very best, it's not kind of anything like athletic standard, but let's say I would have run about a little bit between 16 and 17 minutes for 5 kilometers. And I'm not really a runner's build, but that was my peak 27 years ago. 3 years ago, was it 2 years ago? No, 2 years ago, in 2023, the best I could do, which was the best time I'd done in quite a while, in terms of the last few years before that, was 19 minutes 36, which was actually 2 seconds slower than Mark Zuckerberg did, which is pretty impressive considering how busy he is. But anyway, now when I ran 5 kilometers 10 days ago, my time was 23 minutes. So if you compare that, you always find people fitter than you and less fit than you. But compared to what I should be achieving, it's really bad. And to wake up with Achilles tendonitis after a 23-minute 5 kilometer run is so disappointing and surprising. And I was racking my brain to try to understand how on earth I could have such a severe injury when I generally don't get injured after such an easy run. Well, what should have been an easy run, but what for me felt like I was going to die. And I think what it boils down to is, apart from the fact that I hadn't run a lot, although that had been the conditions in the past several times where I hadn't run a lot because I'd been traveling, and I'd do a 5K and I wouldn't have any injuries at all. So what I think I'm going to attribute it to is the fact that when I was in the last place I was in until about 4 days ago, it was so dry. It was high altitude. Well, relatively speaking, it was 1,700 meters. And I never measured the humidity, but I would have guessed it would have been, well, I can't even put a figure on it, but it was so dry. And I was constantly dehydrated. My lips were cracking and I just couldn't get enough water in. And water's so boring to drink. It's actually such a difficult discipline because there's nothing kind of heroic about drinking water. So you don't really have much inspiration to do it. And so I allowed myself to be dehydrated. And I was looking today at videos of someone's Achilles tendon, a dead person's Achilles tendon. I don't know how they got permission, but it was educational. They'd removed the skin and some calf from an Achilles tendon. And what had occurred to me was that it's basically just a kind of a lump of kind of fibrous elastic gel. And so if you can imagine, like this dead person, of course, is completely dehydrated, and his Achilles tendon was so kind of rigid and brittle. And it occurred to me that if we don't have enough water in our bodies, then things like cartilages, tendons, ligaments, which are all kind of gels of some description, would become brittle. And I was wondering whether my Achilles tendon was so brittle with my level of dehydration, that contributed to its inflexibility and it becoming, kind of micro-torn. So what I've decided to do, because I'm still a bit dehydrated from the trip, is to focus on totally rehydrating myself. So I looked at a video on how to heal Achilles tendonitis. I'll link to it in the description of this video. And I'm going to go through the methods that I can't remember his name, but the guy recommends. I think it involves a bit of massage, a bit of stretching, a bit of making sure you can regain your original degree of movement and flexibility, and then strengthening so that you safeguard against future damage. So I'm going to be working on that for a couple of days, and then I'm going to start training again, albeit this time more cautiously. So I'm going to monitor that. Now, I hope this kind of feedback is useful for other people in my position who've been out of training for a long time. They've lost condition, and they may be experiencing niggles as well. But it's something I haven't seen anywhere when doing research, this connection between hydration and tendon flexibility. I can do some more research about it, but certainly that's, to me, quite a compelling argument for why I suffered this. It's the left one that got injured. I'm actually doing both because both have been subject to the same forces, pretty much, and both of them need to increase their flexibility and range of movement. So it didn't make much sense to me just to focus on the one that had the pain and inflammation. And also, by doing the healthy one first, I have an idea of what feels normal when I'm working on the affected one. So I've rubbed up and down really just to distribute the oil, but now I'm moving from side to side, kind of across the grain of the elastic, just because the guy said to do that in the video. So that's where it feels bad. It feels actually like there's something twinging there. Yeah, I can feel it like a little bit of electricity running through me when I'm squeezing there. So I'm just warming up the area to promote the flow of blood to the area I'm trying to improve, and then into the kind of sliding pinching. So that's pretty much the routine, and I will be reporting back in a couple of days when it feels like my Achilles tendon is flexible and I'm not experiencing any pain or swelling or anything like that. What I would say now is that because I used peppermint oil, which has a kind of a, well, I don't know if it's like a warming or a cooling effect. It feels like kind of both. Now it feels great. It feels slightly wet, even though it's not wet. It's just the neurological sensation. So I feel like I could do something now, but I think that would be foolish. So I've got a few urgent things I've got to catch up on anyway. So when I finish all of those, I'll probably go out and do a run, maybe on the weekend, Thursday today. Actually, cancel that. That's a bit of a cop-out. Although I can't run with this damaged Achilles tendon, there are other things I can do. In fact, as I've got older, what I've noticed is that whereas when I was younger, I was much too impatient to spend any time in doing kind of strength exercises, I've now realised it's a bit of a necessity to do it, because you can be a racing snake and be like super light and have a great power to weight ratio and knock out really good times, but then if the moment you do anything out of the ordinary or some kind of ultra endurance event where there's kind of repetitive strain on a particular body part, let's say like you're moving around the side of a mountain and you're contouring and you've got your kind of feet are at a funny angle, then bang, you're gone and something goes, and you could be in the middle of nowhere and you're going to have difficulty getting back to civilization. So I've made the decision that I need to do some kind of strength training exercises. So I'm going to be doing things which previously I was far too impatient to do. I'm still too impatient to go to a gym, but I've got a little setup here with some variable weights and some elastics and that kind of thing. And also I'll be doing some CrossFit, which I wouldn't do on my own, but when you've got somebody barking commands at you, it's somehow more tolerable than forcing yourself to do things like that. So maybe tomorrow I'll see if I can do some strength training to try and safeguard against the injuries that I would otherwise get. So I'll try and report back tomorrow.